Welcome to the Dream Machine. My name is Aaron.
And my name is Patricia.
Hey Patricia, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween to you too. And I have to say we have an episode of monstrous proportions.
Yes, so let's get ourselves upwards into space and let's see what it is.
Okay. So, Monsters vs. Aliens is a DreamWorks 18th animation film. It is the fourth film in the DreamWorks team of Madagascar. The film was released generally positively, and though unfortunately it didn't do that great at the box office. But, I mean, I don't know, in regards to what Monsters vs. Aliens was trying to achieve, I mean, I would say it does it to kind of moderate success.
Sure, I mean, there's a lot of good things about this movie for sure. And I mean, it just gets bogged down by some noticeable flaws.
So, I mean, I guess in regards to the whole feeling of the film, I mean, would you? I don't know, like in regards to in the after with in regards to Shrek, in regards to Madagascar, and I guess in regards to every other film, I don't know. There are some bits of it which feel like they go really well, and actually there are things that you can get into, but then there's other bits that are just kind of underwhelming, really.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like I can understand why a lot of people would like this movie because it's the classic monsters and it has the classic aliens and hey, it's like a big brawl of them together fighting. So I can see the appeal of it. But then at the same time when we've been spoiled over the years with the likes of Shrek and Kung Fu Panda, Madagascar, and a few years later we would have How to Train Your Dragon. I guess I can kind of understand why some people felt a little bit underwhelmed with it.
So we're introduced to Susan, who is a reporter at the TV network, alongside with Derek, and they are eventually about to get married. And when we're introduced to Susan, we're kind of introduced her into a way of like how she knows what her life is going to be like, and she's going to be soon. Going to be wedded up to Derek, who's this kind of hotshot reporter, and I don't know, like when she was waiting at the outside the chapel, and then Derek just kind of like goes in at the beginning. It's like there's part of me that kind of led me to believe that he was going to be the villain of the movie for some strange reason.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. He does kind of like play off this as this really cocky guy who seems like he pretty much knows it all. It kind of similar to Gaston from Beauty and the Beast.
And I don't know, it's because like there was part of me that believed, oh yeah, they're kind of like teasing that, he's kind of like the one who's kind of like in control and everything like that, and I thought that was basically going to play out in like the aliens part of it when they were finally going to come in, but no, it was he's mainly just there as kind of an anchor, really, I guess, to Susan's character.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely plays into that 1950s archetype about how women, they feel like the getting married to a man and starting a family is like part of their upbringings. And so the fact that it gets pretty much ruined, she feels like she has nothing left. All her life that she has been waiting for in terms of, this is the guy of my dreams and this is what I'm supposed to do. It just goes away, and she kind of has like this meltdown, which makes it really sad and identifiable.
So, though all plans start to go awry when she gets hit by a radioactive meteorite. Didn't do that.
As you do.
As you do, yeah. Like that came completely out of nowhere, and so then she grows into a 50-foot giant, destroying the entire church in the process. When the military goes to investigate, they attack Susan, sedating her with a giant syringe full of tranquilizer. And so, I think, mind you, like, I'm surprised that, I think lucky for her that her clothes also kind of mutated at the same time as she did. So,
yeah, I guess so. I mean, it could have been like Terminator, in which, when they, transferred it back into the past, they have no non-organic forms left. So we could have had a different movie altogether.
It makes me wonder if they I wonder if they would have played that joke. I don't know, but
I don't think so. I mean, maybe for the aliens portion, but I don't think for the monster portion.
carry on monstering.
Ah, boo.
Okay, so we get to the part where she's entered into the facility, where she is labeled as a monster, and then gets her name legally changed to Ginormica. Which and so then we're introduced to the general, I believe, who says so he's kind of like the stereotypical. I guess the best way to describe him is probably the soldier from Team Fortress 2. I guess.
Your typical over the top soldier who just basically just shouts and basically takes power and just ridiculing their soldiers. Very similar to like from Full Metal Jacket, the soldier, the general from that movie.
Yeah. So I think so he's obviously in that role, and so they meet up with the four monsters: Bob, the Missing Link, Doctor Cockroach, and Insectosaurus, an alien.
Yeah,
named...
which Bob would actually become like a major focus in the TV series. It seemed like they just kind of pushed Susan off to the side as like a supporting character, and Bob just pretty much just took over after that.
Well, I can kind of understand because I mean, I guess Bob wasn't as developed in this film, I think, as the other ones were. Because I was trying to think, what's Bob's backstory in this?
I don't really know, to be quite honest.
I know, because like the Missing Link obviously is the Missing Link. He was obviously discovered in a was he discovered in the North Pole? Was he? I can't remember exactly.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I'm trying to remember, like, off the top of my head, what he, what it was. He was captured due to his lack of exercise and activity, apparently, and in his imprisonment regime. So, he was somewhat captured like a long time ago, and he's basically just been in the facility ever since. So,
gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. Cockroach, I believe his backstory that he obviously got fused with a cockroach, and now is obviously this. Apparently, he's like one of the most brilliant scientists in the world. Apparently, so he's been imprisoned in Area 52 for a considerably long time, and then you have Insectosaurus, who is basically just a giant. I think was it nuclear radiation? I think that's
I think it was nuclear radiation.
Insane. Then we're introduced to Galaxar, who is our going to be our villain for the movie, and I guess what do we think of our villain for this thing?
I mean, in terms of like all the other villains that we've had in DreamWorks movies, which aren't a lot, to be quite honest. I mean, we've had like a few, such as like let's see, for Ants we had General Mandible. For Prince of Egypt, I guess you can count as Ramses. For the Shrek movies, there's Lord Farquaad, the Godmother, Prince Charming, Rumpelstiltskin. For Megamind, we're not going to get to that point yet, but we've had our fair share of villains in terms of like DreamWorks movies, and I see him as okay, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I was thinking in general, like, I think he is kind of like, I guess he's a bit too stereotypical, I guess, for...
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, but, when it comes to, like, DreamWorks villains, I mean, there's not a lot that really stand out, personally, for me. I think the ones that really do stand out are, like, the Kung Fu Panda villains, or, Shrek 2's Fairy Godmother's fantastic, and, and in general, Mandible was a pretty, in terms of like what he is as an ant, and the Darwinism of like wiping his civilization to start anew. It is pretty cynical. There's that. There's definitely been a lot worse DreamWorks villains, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think I definitely say that. So, Galaxar defeats the Quantinium radiation emitting from the Earth and deploys a gigantic robot probe to find it and extract it from its source. Susan, after a botched attempt by the President of the United States, Stephen Colbert.
I find that so hilarious.
Some people say that's
President of the United States.
Yeah, some people say that's the best part of the movie. The fact that Stephen Colbert.
He is pretty hilarious, I have to say. Just the fact of Stephen Colbert, who was along with Jon Stewart for The Daily Show, and then he had his own show, basically just making fun of politics. he's now the president of the United States. It's just brilliant.
Yeah. Probably prefer him than Trump. I think definitely say, oh, yeah. And that's a cheap joke. I apologize. So,
But no, I mean seriously, he has some of the funniest moments in the movie. I mean, just the fact that he's so tough and he's so bravado, but at the same time he's just shown off as a coward. And of course, there's that infamous scene in which he's playing to the music and he's dancing, which a lot of people say is pretty dumb, but
yeah.
you know, I find it kind of hilarious.
I think just I think the reason why I think people find it dumb is because the theme he's playing is the Beverly Hills Cop theme, which is
I know,
a song,
and you know that Crazy Frog pretty much just like made it into a meme.
Oh God, you got that Crazy Frog as well. I really
yes, we got Crazy Frog. I think he was like our he was like the ringtone of the 2000s.
Oh my God, I really thought that was just a British thing.
No. Thank you, Guru Larry, for bringing it up.
Yeah, it's like oh, good grief, but this is
the
thing.
Like a popular ringtone, like
well, it's not just the Crazy Frog that did. Yeah. It's not just the Crazy Frog that did it though. It was parodied in quite it was I think even a Super Nintendo game even had the
yes it was a Super Nintendo game I think, and there was even like a whole bunch of ports for like the Commodore and the Amiga and all that stuff.
Yeah. So. I think it was just because there was so many variations of that tune. I think it's because I think everyone was getting sick of it by the time we got to the Crazy Frog. I think and now
and not to mention there were so many sequels to that movie.
Yeah, there was, and so. It makes me wonder, like, I mean, could he have done a better theme? I guess a more funnier theme. I guess. I mean, would it have been more funny if he'd like done? I don't know. I don't know, maybe the theme to Independence Day, or like I don't know.
What is the theme to Independence Day?
Actually, that's a good question. The fact that we don't know the theme to Independence Day, I don't think we even get that reference. So
yeah, I don't. I mean, maybe the theme to Terminator if it was funny.
No, I don't know.
Or Star Trek.
Maybe. So something that would have. You know what would be funny? Tainted Love. You know, and all you do is basically just press one key. He's like, duh. That would have been hilarious if he'd probably done that. But no, I don't think he was gonna.
Yeah,
I don't think he would have played too well. I don't think.
But seriously, it's like. I mean, there could have been worse songs out there. Maybe it could have been like a song that was like really popular at the time, and maybe would have been like playing out, and that would have definitely dated the movie even more.
Probably, yeah. So, mind you,
especially
Beverly Hills Cop
have always been known for their pop culture references. So, yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised if they would have, pulled off a stunt in which, like, hey, we're gonna do something that's, that was popular then, and now it's gonna be dated in a few years. So,
by the way, they have the whole scene where they're flying in the massive, military airplane, and you finally get to see like a close up of like the Monster Department logo thing, and it's basically Shrek's head on a medal.
Yes.
It's like I was like, oh my goodness, like that's.
I mean, I can understand, to be fair, because Shrek Forever After was going to be their next movie because it came out in 2009 and Shrek Forever After came out in 2010.
Yeah, I was wondering, do Monsters and versus Aliens and Shrek all live in the same universe? I guess.
Oh man, we're gonna go with the Pixar theory, aren't we?
Well, I'm just thinking about that because I'm just wondering in the timeline. I mean, I guess Monsters vs. Aliens take place. Dare I say, but if it's like a cheap 1950s movie, like a monster movie, I think probably maybe it takes place in the 1950s and 60s. And
that's where they're going for.
And maybe Shrek, the Shrek universe takes place like centuries before then. Maybe.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, like maybe Shrek. I mean, you know how in Shrek, it's always open like a book and a fairy tale. So maybe Shrek is the fairy tale, and maybe it's become so well known that it's pretty much been plastered in the DreamWorks universe. I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh my God, it's Instruction.
Your puns hurt so badly, Aaron.
Anyway, wasn't there a movie we're supposed to be talking about? I believe
Monsters vs. Aliens. So,
right.
We get introduced to the other cast, and we get introduced to the villain and the president of the United States. And basically, it just follows into the path of the monsters preparing the fight against the aliens. There's this huge alien invasion that's going to be happening, and they're going to be prepared for it. And we see Susan is just not equipped for it. Was going to be a housewife to this reporter, and she has to learn and develop as a character in terms of that now she has been, she has been drafted to basically save the world from aliens.
I've got an interesting question for you. There's one thing I need to ask you before I put it on to you. Have you ever seen Suicide Squad?
No.
Okay. On what you know of Suicide Squad, do you think maybe Monsters vs. Aliens probably did this better than Suicide Squad?
Possibly, because from what I understand about Suicide Squad is that it's a group of villains who all hate Batman and they gather together.
Mm.
And that's and you know, you have Killer Croc, you have Harley Quinn, you have the Joker, you have characters that you know of, and they're, you know, it's in Gotham City, and you know they have you know, they gather together, and you I don't know in terms of how much backstory they get, because when team up movies like this, it's very difficult to like build up enough time to develop each and every single individual character with their own backstories and their own agendas. I think the smart thing that the Avengers has done, and I know that everybody's sick and tired of the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this point, but hear me out. I would think that in Monsters vs. Aliens, there are some characters that get a lot more development than others, and I take it that Suicide Squad is the same thing. But in terms of like characters that we come to know and appreciate, like whether it be Bob or whether it be Susan or whether it be you know, the missing link, then yeah, they are interesting characters that we want to know more of. And you know, them going together to fight off aliens, I mean, sure, I mean, from what I understand from Suicide Squad, I think they did pull it off a little bit better,
Hmm.
because we know what their motive is, and we know that they were called to fight off this alien force that's trying to essentially, you know, take over the world, because of course they do.
Yeah, because I mean, in a way, I'm not sure because the way that it was executed in Suicide Squad, and I think maybe probably comparing it to the Suicide Squad movie probably might be a bit unfair. But I guess in regards to like, let's say we basically stripped down the movies and we basically put it down to basically the story. I mean, dare I say, maybe Suicide Squad maybe probably did it a little bit better than probably Monsters vs. Aliens, because this general apparently just throws them into this situation and just expects them to kind of like, you know, do something.
I
And
mean,
like,
it kind of reminds, you know what, it gives me, this movie, some for some strange reason, gave me a lot of We're Back, a Dinosaur Story vibes. You have this professor who just shows up out of nowhere and gives these dinosaurs the intelligence so that they can be able to, you know, help these kids out accomplish their dreams of wanting to see dinosaurs in the middle future. And then they just get dropped off into New York City without them knowing about anything. And then they're supposed to just find Central Park by themselves. It's like, yeah, like you're expecting dinosaurs to learn about our future, and you're not going to take them yourself.
yeah, like
And
it's just another thing that putting real dinosaurs in the middle of New York City is going to be not going to spook a couple of people.
and it also doesn't help much that we do have one scene in which Susan is skating with, you know, car skates into a bridge, and the same thing also happened in We're Back, in which Rex, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, because haha, creative name,
Hmm.
when they were trying to escape from the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, you know, he uses a pickup truck, and he uses it as a skateboard, and he skates on top of the Brooklyn Bridge. So
Right now we're using references. We're Back and Suicide Squad. I mean, this movie is not doing too, this movie is not doing too well at the minute in the first and second act. And so I mean, so obviously they have to deal with this robot, and they chase this robot across the city, and Bob gets stuck underneath the robot's foot, you know, you know, the chewing gum thing. And so Susan lures the robot into the Golden Gate Bridge, where the missing link has been knocked out. Unable to fight, Insectosaurus then arrives and defeats the robot. So
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it would have been really cool if we would have gotten like a little bit more with the missing link, because, you know, he's the missing link. I would think that maybe he would have like the powers of like, you know, the strength of the Yeti or a Sasquatch, in which he can be able to defeat things. But I guess, you know, him being a wild monster taken up against a robot, I guess it kind of makes sense. Maybe like primitive versus modern technology.
it's a bit of a mismatch to me because I mean, in my like from what I gather, he's an amphibious creature. So if anything, he's kind of like Aquaman. So I thought, you know, so,
Yeah, I mean, but then again, he doesn't like shoot water or anything like that.
no, he doesn't. So Now basically, so apparently that wins them their freedom, and so they're able to roam around. So Susan returns to her hometown and introduces her family and friends to the monsters, who are quickly dejected after innocently causing a panicked ruckus in the neighborhood. Derek, meanwhile, breaks up with Susan, claiming that they can't be married to someone who could overshadow his career. So,
I mean, I guess I can understand that because once again, going into the whole 1950s ordeal in terms of like, the man is the dominant one and he's supposed to be the one to support the family and he's supposed to be like the man of the house and the king of the castle, if you will. And if a woman is overshadowing him, then that's equally, then that's, considered to be bad. So, I mean, at the time, I can understand that. I mean, if they are going for the whole 1950s thing, which they are in terms of like, the way that the monsters are designed and the way that the people act, again, I can understand this.
Yeah. So this bit's kind of awkward, really, because it's kind of like, Derek obviously breaks up with Susan, and then obviously he's written out with the rest of the film until the very end. So it's like,
yes, yeah. I understand that, but at the same time, this is definitely to build up more of Susan's character, as she's now a completely different person, not in terms of like her physical size, but in terms of who she became. In the beginning of the movie, she was ready to marry this guy and ready to start off her life as a housewife, but now she's 50 feet tall. She's met up with other creatures that she probably wouldn't have never met in regular circumstances, and she can fight off against giant creatures and aliens, and even a robot. So she's actually become a much more stronger person than Derek ever could.
Yeah, I think but then they give her the monologue of her basically saying, "Oh yeah, I am stronger than this guy," and I don't know. There's part of me that believes that was a bit too early. I think it would have had more effect if they left it to the very end when she confronted Derek again and they said, "You know what? I am stronger than you. Lift him into the air and throw him across the halfway across the world or something like that." I think,
I can definitely see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So. So obviously then, I'll tell you one thing that I like about this movie, and the one thing it doesn't do?
What?
The whole, all the friends are going to fall out and they're all going to go their separate ways and then they come back together at the end of the movie.
Oh, yeah, like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, at least it doesn't do that cliche. Just like...
I can understand, definitely. It doesn't leave off until, like, they have a huge disagreement and then they decide to separate, and then at the end there's just this giant... force that forces them to come back together. So yeah, at least they do stick together toward the end.
Yeah, they do. So so I like the way this bit. I like the way the final third actually goes. I think the final third actually is pretty
like
good.
It too.
Yeah,
it was actually pretty fun, and it has the most action throughout the entire movie.
Mm-hmm. So Galaxo captures Susan, and obviously to enhance to get the radiation out of her to obviously enhance his army of clones. Funnily enough, to do that, and mind you, this bit they also play up the the 3D elements. That's one thing that they do that throughout throughout the movie, like the 3D effects that they go for in this film. I just don't think. I think they stick out a little bit to me. Like this
was when 3D was having a huge comeback. This was when they decided, ever since the likes of various movies being released on 3D and kind of like upping the effects. This has been a trend that has happened around the late 2000s, early 2010s, in which there were movies that clearly didn't need to be 3D. They just did it for the sake of, we can get some more money and ticket revenue, to show off that we have 3D effects. But if you're looking at it in 2D, it just looks awkward.
Yeah, so about as well. Like if you're watching it today, when kind of like the 3D gimmick is kind of like subsided, and you're watching a 4K television without any 3D dimensional effects. Monsters vs. Aliens doesn't translate well. It's just
no, it doesn't.
No, and so about that as well. I think they should have when they knew the 3D gimmick was gone, they should have just they probably should have done just done a 2D version of it. And just said,
hey, that's true.
Yeah, because I was watching it on the BBC one time on BBC One during Christmas, and when it was on, it was like because BBC doesn't do 3D, it's just you can see the effects are there, and it would have been more effective. Like the bit when the Galaxo was going on his monologue about trying to capture Susan. For his plot, and all the stuff's like floating around in front of him, and you can see like they're doing the blurred things, and then he reaches out to like grab bits and pieces and that. Like, it would have been more effective if like they were like floating like around him in like a sphere. So like you pan round with the camera and then you could see all the things that are floating around him, and then you just grab one out and things like that. Maybe then the 3D probably would have translated a bit better to it, but in regards to that scene, I just think it sticks out a bit, really, for me.
Yeah, and when in terms of like other 3D effects that's been featured in other DreamWorks movies, yeah, they just don't really nail it very well. The only times in which I have seen it done really, really good is with How to Train Your Dragon and the Kung Fu Panda movie, and that's pretty much it as far as I can remember.
Yeah. So, with the assistance of General Monga, Bob, the Dr. Cockroach, and the Missing Link infiltrate Galaxar's ship, rescue Susan, and hotwire the ship's power core, activating the ship's self-destruct sequence. The monsters then think that the aliens are running scared, but they are running towards the door before the doors close. Missing Link throws off an alien off his hovering scooter and hops on to goes fast, grabbing his friends. But the Hoover scooter is way down because of all the monsters on the scooter. So you can see there's like this massive action scene that comes out through that, and the fight scenes are pretty good as well. I
mean, it's not as like amazing compared to like Kung Fu Panda, but yeah, I think that the fight scene is. It is pretty good, I must say.
Mm-hmm. And the choice of obviously Galaxar obviously harvesting Susan's radiation to and she and given the chance to kind of go back to normal again, like obviously there's that kind of like whole debate of that, and also you mentioned as well the time that it was in as well. So it was all the kind of like the ethics of things going on. So that was kind of fun to kind of watch the back and forth between Susan and Galaxar in that regard. So the monsters receive a huge welcome when they finally defeat him, and Galaxar attempts to get back with Susan for the sake of interviewing her, which will benefit his career. Instead, Susan rejects him and forces him to endure humiliation of being thrown into the air and caught, swallowed and spit out by Bob on camera. And at that moment, the monsters are alerted to a monster attack, a giant snail near Paris, to fly off to combat the new menace, and so a new team is born. Pretty much.
Yeah, so I'm kind of surprised that with the exception of maybe a few shorts and then the TV series, I'm surprised they didn't do any more sequels based off of Monsters vs. Aliens.
Well, there is a reason for that, and this movie, surprisingly enough, was actually far more expensive than some other movies that DreamWorks, even Pixar for that matter, have produced. Would you believe this budget is actually $175 million?
I guess I'm not surprised considering about how much of the 3D effects that was added into this movie.
Yeah,
and maybe another thing that probably got the movie to be a little bit more expensive was maybe the gelatinous body of Bob. Maybe they needed to have some more money on that, or maybe it was the celebrity cameos. I'm not sure.
Having the celebrity cameos, I think, were probably. I'll be interested to see how much Stephen Colbert was paid for that appearance.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And when we get to Shrek 2, we're going to be discussing about how much money was, given to Mike Myers, Cameron Diaz, and Eddie Murphy, and then the rest was going to go to the movie. We'll discuss about that next time.
Definitely. And so the budget for this movie was, as I said again, $175 million, and it only pulled in about $381 million. So
it made 3 times its budget, so that's not bad. But considering that we've had other movies like Prince of Egypt and Shrek, which like quadrupled its money, I guess I can kind of see it as like it was a moderate success.
I think they probably were looking at when they were probably doing it, they're probably looking to go 5 times their budget, which I know would probably be excessive. I think in regards to that, but I don't think they realized that it was. I think people took a look at it and thought, yeah, this is cicadas of the 3D gimmick. On top of that as well, I think the audience for it, was a little bit too niche. I think, if you ask me, because if they're going on the whole thing of 1950s monster movies and things like that, maybe that's okay for the people who kind of grew up with Godzilla and grew up with those kind of films and that, but that was people like that were far and few between. And so
nowadays it's gotten a lot more mainstream because Godzilla is becoming a lot more popular. Pacific Rim has really came in terms of monsters versus giant robots, and I think that we've had a lot more other kaiju's, and tokusatsu has become a lot more mainstream in terms of like with Power Rangers and Kamen Rider and stuff. I think that if this movie would have came out today, I think it would have been a much more bigger success than it was almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, who knows? Like maybe well, what it took us? How long did it take us to get an Incredibles 2 sequel? Sorry, Incredibles sequel.
About 8 years.
So maybe in another. Oh, mind you, it's been 2009 since it was released. It's 2018 now as of this broadcast. But I mean, who knows? Maybe in another couple of years' time, maybe they might turn around and say, hey, maybe we might give Monsters vs. Aliens another try. And maybe it might even be a demo for like some other technology they might want to use. Maybe.
Yeah, let's just hope it's not a tech demo like The Good Dinosaur.
Well, yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
But yeah, I think that. But you remember, Guillermo del Toro. The movie that got him last year's Oscar was essentially a love story about a monster and a human being. So if that can win an Oscar, then I think that a sequel to Monsters vs. Aliens, I mean, it seems like it can be done. It came out a year after the first Iron Man, and this was before there was the buildup of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So if we can have that, and maybe we can have like other monsters coming into terms of like teaming up for a bigger and badder alien group, or maybe like the entire galaxy is at risk, then I can definitely see that.
Yeah. A bit of trivia, actually, to this film as well. Would you believe, Patricia, out of all the DreamWorks Animations films, this is actually the second DreamWorks Animation film to have a female protagonist?
Yeah, you're right, because the first one was Ginger from Chicken Run.
Yeah, and so we'll definitely be taking... And by the way, we'll be reviewing Chicken Run on Remembrance Day. So that's what I'm scheduled for that one. And
that's crazy, don't you think? Because it took them... Let's see, Chicken Run came out in, 2001? And then that was like another 8 years until we had Susan. So, yeah, it's crazy that, they've had less female protagonists. And I would be... I mean, I'm surprised that there hasn't been any more. I mean, let's see. I guess to be fair, Pixar can also be, the same thing, because how many female protagonists do they have in that?
Here's an interesting debate. Mind you, we'll probably debate this during the Shrek films, but would you say Princess Fiona was a joint, female lead? No, female protagonist. With,
a joint female protagonist?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I mean a female protagonist, like on the same level as like Donkey and Shrek.
Oh, yeah. Yes, of course. I mean, I can't see Princess Fiona without, Shrek or Donkey. I mean, she's like a major part in the franchise.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So maybe you could argue maybe she's maybe a slight third, I guess. She's not the main, protagonist of the show, but one of them.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah, exactly.
And also, just some more for the trivia as well. This was the third DreamWorks animation film to be produced in 2:35:1 aspect ratio. The only other films to do that is Spirit Stallion of Cimarron and Kung Fu Panda.
Okay, so I guess that's what made it a little bit more expensive to work with.
Probably is, yeah, I guess. So yeah, but there was also, as you mentioned, there was a television series which also came out of it as well. And but mind you, there is also another special that came out, and because it's Halloween, we thought we'd expand this out a bit more. And that is that Monsters vs. Aliens also had a Halloween special.
Yes, it did. Which it makes perfect sense because it does have monsters in it.
Mm-hmm. So, I'll tell you what, and the one thing is, I've already forgotten what the title of it is. It's Monsters vs. Aliens, the Mutant Pumpkins from Outer Space, I believe it was called. I think
that's the one, yeah. It's definitely about mutant pumpkins, yeah.
So, the long and short of it basically is that these aliens come down and put this fluid into this pumpkin patch. The pumpkins come to life, and then they slowly get themselves bought by humans, and then they eventually start to invade the neighborhood and start to try to eat everyone's candy.
Yeah, so, very similar to Gremlins in a sense. You have like these cute little mogwais, and then they turn into like these vicious creatures, and then they start attacking everything.
Yeah, I would say it's more similar to kind of Small Soldiers. Kind of like they take the pumpkins home, and then all of a sudden they come to life, and then all of a sudden they start causing chaos. So it's like I guess you could say it's a little bit kind of like that, I guess. But it's
the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
So for a 30-minute short, I mean, like, well, it's not really 30. It's a kind of Halloween special, I guess you could say. Like for a 30 minutes show, I guess you could definitely say that they try to put in as many elements of it as possible. Like you have Susan, who really wants to go home for Halloween, but then finds out that she has to work, and so she has to kind of like bluff her parents that she's actually doing trick or treating and like being home for the family and stuff, and while they try and find the alien. And then you have Dr. Cockroach, who's reliving his experience of being beaten up for his candy when he was a child. And then you have the missing link, who's always wanted to go to a Halloween, but has never had a chance to do so because he's been locked up in Area 51 for most of his life. And then you have Bob, who's just kind of being himself, really. So
again, like he's pretty much like the fan favorite of the series.
Mm-hmm. They throw in a lot. I'll tell you what, kudos for them to throwing in a lot of story elements into it. So,
yeah. I mean, they could have just easily had a typical story about pumpkin aliens from outer space just coming down and just attacking stuff, but no, they actually did bring a story into this, which is actually pretty commendable, because I mean it could have just been filled with gags and just lazy jokes.
I'll tell you what, actually, they also threw in they threw in a lot of effort into it, because if you follow the credits at the very end, it's like 8 minutes of the running time. So it's like, that's how crazy
it's like it's almost like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, in which they have so many people working on this that the credits go for a very long time. And we're not talking about like Mighty Number 9 in terms of like all the patrons who like donated money to it, and it's like 30 minutes long.
Mm-hmm. So that was so he came up with a very amazing Halloween special as well. So we've had quite a treat of Monsters vs. Aliens, I guess you could say.
Yeah, definitely. For anybody who overlooked this movie when it first came out, thinking that it sounds pretty stupid, then I would suggest that actually give it a chance, because if you're into like fun adventure, if you're into spooky aliens that have a little bit of fun to them, if you're into Stephen Colbert being president of the United States, and if you want a female protagonist who is going through a lot but finds herself changing her life, then I do recommend that you check it out.
So if you have kids, you're progressive and a fan of monster movies, definitely check out Monsters vs. Aliens. So
yes, I mean, whether it's better than Hotel Transylvania, that's up to you to decide.
Is Hotel Transylvania on our list? I don't know if it is or not.
No, that's Sony Pictures Animation. So
Thank you.
It's not on our list.
No, definitely not. Oh man, imagine if we have to go through the Sony Pictures at one point. Like that's
well, to be fair, there's really not a lot. So I mean, we'll probably like tour it off in like, I don't know, like
but that means we have to
maybe like a summer or something.
Yeah, but that means we have to watch the Smurfs. I don't want to watch the Smurfs. Oh, God. Anyway, moving on from that. So there was one other Halloween special that I think we should pretty much note, which is Scared Shrekless, which was a TV and also a DVD special featuring Shrek characters, and it was kind of like Treehouse of Horror, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So.
It does feature a lot of like anthology stories to the Shrek characters.
Mm-hmm. So, though interesting enough, though, Donkey, he's not played by Eddie Murphy.
No, he's not. I think that he's the same guy who voiced him in Mulan 2, I think, where he's essentially trying to be an impersonation of Eddie Murphy. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's who he is.
Yeah, it's kind of like that joke in Bowfinger, isn't it? It's like they have Eddie Murphy playing his stunt double as well. So it's like
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm not surprised that they couldn't get Eddie Murphy for this, because I think they did get. Correct me if I'm wrong. They did get the other characters, like the other voice actors, right?
Well, they didn't get Rupert Everett to play Prince Charming. Let's get Sean Bishop to do that.
That's understandable.
Yeah, but here's the thing about this. Like, was this at the time when Eddie Murphy was starting to become desperate and all his movie projects?
That's exactly what I was gonna say too, because this was when he was doing like all of those really, really mediocre family films just so he can be able to stay afloat. And I was just about to mention that maybe, he kind of like fell from grace at that point. So maybe they either didn't want to have Eddie Murphy, or maybe they couldn't afford Eddie Murphy. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm really surprised. I'm really surprised he never did that TV special, because that was in 2010. And do you want me to read out the movies that Eddie Murphy was doing in 2010?
Sure.
Okay. The first movie he did was The Adventures of Pluto Nash.
Oh God.
The next one after that was I Spy with Owen Wilson.
I've never heard of it.
Okay. The next one was Imagine That.
Yes. Okay, I know about this one because I think this is a Nickelodeon movie. Is it?
I think so, yeah.
So I know about. I was really close to actually reviewing this movie in my first Nickelodeon tribute back in 2012, and oh man, it is just so desperate. It's all. I feel like it's like a ripoff of the Adam Sandler movie where you have, those kids that imagine everything. So it feels like that almost.
hmm And the next one after that was Meet Dave.
Oh God, I forgot about that movie, but I remember seeing it once, and I was just disappointed that that it was getting into that point because I just it was so bad. It
Yeah.
was really bad.
And then on 2010, I don't know who on earth demanded this, but it was a re-release of Norbit.
Oh God.
Yeah. And would you believe in that same year, all of them won the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Actor of the Decade?
Yep, I am not surprised.
Yeah, so that was 2010 for Eddie Murphy, so I was very surprised that he never picked up Scared Shrekless to at least try and get a check. So, but there you go. So, moving back to Scared Shrekless, the shorts basically include The Bride of Gingy, which includes Gingerbread Man getting a girlfriend and built with so much sugar that she basically loves everything about him, and then so she ends up having to destroy her, only to find out that there's multiple zombie clones of herself have now appeared, and then basically signs it off with saying that he was killed at the end of it, despite the fact that he's actually in the middle of the room telling the story. So
Yeah.
it's like that moment in The Simpsons where it's like, one time there was a coal miner strike, and then the coal collapsed, and not anyone made it alive, not even Willie. Oh my goodness! And then there was Boots Motel, and so Donkey and Buzz tell the story of them taking shelter in a thunderstorm at the Boots Motel, which is a parody of the Bates Motel from Psycho. So that was that was short. And then there was the oh my god, the name of this, the Shrexorist. And if you think
These puns hurt so bad.
yeah, you thought my pun of instruction was bad.
It's still bad though.
Yeah, so basically, if you got a chance to check that out, then do so. So it originally aired on NBC, and then it was released on DVD. I've had a chance to watch some clips, but I've not actually had a chance to watch the full thing. So
Yeah. And you're probably wondering, why are we talking Scared Shrekless? Well, two reasons. Number one, obviously it's Halloween. And number two, when we discussed about Chicken Run, even though that technically it is the fourth of the DreamWorks lineup, we're actually going to be doing a switch because of Remembrance Day, which is on the 11th. So next time we're actually going to be talking about the first Shrek movie, and then we're going to talk about Chicken Run.
yeah, so for anyone who's confused about that last part, there you go. So
Yeah.
cool. Well, that's it, I think, for the Dream Machine Halloween special. So I have been Aaron.
And I've been Patricia.
And good night, whatever you are.
Happy Halloween. Mwah.